Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this talk here. Really excited. So my name is Christian Greiner. I lead carrier growth at DAT. So a lot of my job is helping carriers be successful, be profitable, whether that's utilizing the tools we offer or just hearing feedback on how we can improve. Really excited about this panel. Before we get started, I got a question for the audience. Who here has ever been to a stadium or a concert or airport and looked at the price of food or a beer and thought, that's ridiculous? Raise your hand. Okay. Leave your hand raised if you bought it anyways. Okay. Interesting. So now, sir, I know you're not on the panel. But I'm gonna pick on you. So why? Why did you buy it anyways when you knew it was overpriced? He was hungry. He was thirsty. That was what was available. Okay. I got another question. Who here has ever had to run to the store, get medicine for a spouse or a child, and you get there and you see the name brand, and then you see the generic right next to it, and chose the name brand? Raise your hand if you've chosen the name brand. Okay. Leave your hand raised if you know that it's the same ingredients as the generic and you bought it anyways. Okay. I'm going to pick on you again. Okay. Why? Why'd you do that? Okay. Nice. Just to make sure, just to be safe. Okay. So those are actually, before I got into this industry, I was in marketing and studied a lot of pricing of consumer goods. And those are two very important principles, right? The value of the brand and the consumer value of the timing. And so those are principles that I believe can be applied to trucking. Because the worst thing that can happen is that carriers are seen as a commodity. And what I mean by that is, in the U.S., most water utilities charge you about 3 to 5 cents for 10 gallons of water, right? That's a commodity. I bought this at the hotel this morning. You slap a logo on it, and all of a sudden this becomes worth $1, right, for just 20 ounces. But you put this in an airport, and all of a sudden I'm paying $6 because it's my only option, right? And I think the hotel charged me $6 this morning for this bottle of water, which is ridiculous. But look, I'm not going to say that we'll have the panel here today that we'll all walk out of here making $6 a mile. But I will say that I've seen this time and time again. I see Khalid up here from CB Freight, which I love. I know for a fact that those guys are, $3.25 a mile this month, averaging, and the national average is $2.74, I think. And so that's 15%, right? On every mile, 200 trucks. Like that's huge, right? And it's because of the principles of branding and the relationships, what it means, and then positioning your trucks using data in the right place. So with that, I want to introduce our panel, who I've learned just a ton from over the years, and just honored to share the stage with them. Tyler, why don't you introduce yourself?
Tyler Jones. I'm from Flint, Texas, close to Tyler, Texas. Yeah, I know that's weird. Tyler Jones from Tyler, Texas. I'm actually from Ohio, but I've been there since I was 4. I am a one-truck, open-deck carrier. I've got a wife, 2 kids. They're sitting out here. The wife's out front. The kids are in the back, the wagon crew, and then the girl waving, that's my sister, my older sister, but that's me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ivan from Chicago. Run 100 trucks, all refrigerated, solos and teams. Been in the industry for about 15 years, and I enjoy trucking.
Awesome. And my name is Robert Rouse. I'm a product manager at DAT. I've been at DAT for 12 years. got to work with carriers, and that's really where I found my passion over the last 12 years is really helping carriers because ultimately they're the ones moving the freight, and so I wanted to get really close and help you guys as much as we can.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys. So again, what we're going to kind of outline throughout this panel is how to avoid becoming a commodity, building trust, and then using data to turn that value into pricing power when it comes time for negotiations. So I'll start with a kind of a lightning round question. So in one sentence, what causes drivers to underprice themselves most often? Tyler?
Not knowing your worth.
Ivan?
To me, it's dwell time.
Dwell time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not understanding the market a lot of times.
Understand the market. Cool. So, Ivan, what does trust actually mean in trucking? What does trust mean?
Well, I believe trust is built based on consistency. It's built based not only on consistency, but it's also built based on being able to position yourself to continuously deliver the same quality work over and over again. Being able to ultimately satisfy your customers regardless of what the market is, and they're able to return the same back. So I believe that's ultimately trust.
How do you turn that into then pricing power? Like, how do you make sure your dispatchers understand that and can translate that into better negotiations?
So by being consistent, by being able to show data that clearly indicates your performance, by aligning SOPs, by ultimately meeting or beating your customers' expectations consistently. That's what gives us negotiation power. And when we're not ultimately the cheapest carrier, we're still the carrier of choice.
Yeah, carrier of choice. Awesome. Tyler, when as an owner operator, when did you first realize that that your reputation mattered?
Early on in the first year, I mean, when you first make a call, you're just a phone call, you're just a truck. But you do something for someone, time and time again, and they call you and they know, hey, this guy is gonna do what he said he's gonna do.
Have you been able to turn that into repeat business?
I have. I'm actually doing a lot of repeat business, some dedicated stuff for. It's a broker, but I consider myself to have some really good rates with them, and I already know what I'm doing next week. I know what I'm doing for the next about 2 months.
Yeah. And why do you think he values you? What do you bring to the table?
I'm more than just a truck. I bring him information like this deal we're doing now. I bring him information. When I go to the first location, there's several different locations. I bring him information to update his information to make it a smoother process.
Ivan, how have you been able to turn those relationships into repeat business?
Yes, absolutely. I believe what really is a key component for us to turn repeated business into repeated business is simply the engagement, that everything starts with robust training on our staff that aligns with the SOPs that are required from the customers, and ultimately have very tight KPIs to track those. When you put everything together and you align with your customer, you're able to deliver that consistent high quality, bring value to the customer, they know what to expect out of you, and that turns into consistent business for us.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, a lot of times when I say the word brand, like people think of a logo like on a water bottle, but really it's about what that logo stands for, right? That trust, the promises associated with that. And I'm curious, Tyler, how have you seen that played out, right? Like what promises are associated with the name on your truck and your name?
I don't know if I can say so much promises. It's just, we all know there's several different brokerages that people may or may not use. There's several different carriers that people may or may not use. Once you get the name of being that guy, whether it's that good guy or that bad guy. You want to be that good guy. I mean, we got a guy sitting out front that's got a shout out, and I don't even know him, but I already know if I see his trucks, he's that guy. He's that good guy.
Awesome. So what about before the rate negotiation even starts, right? What signals professionalism when you get on that call? How do you signal your professionalism?
Asking the right questions, just being patient, knowing your market. If you just go in there and say, I just want $6 because I want $6, you just sound like you're just firing in the wind to see what you can get. But if I get on a phone call with someone and I know the city and state, and I can tell them who their customer is, that I feel like that lets them know, okay, he knows what he's going into, he knows what he's dealing with. I can trust him with this product.
Yeah. Ivan, same question. What signals professionalism before the rate even comes up?
So before the rate comes up, we definitely analyze the market if we're going to be on the spot market to see how we're going to price ourselves today. But beyond that, we have a lot of data that we look at. We look at relationships, and we know when we get a phone call from certain customers, certain brokers, we know the attitude they're going to have, the professionalism they're going to have, and how ultimately they're going to treat our drivers. Are they going to be considerate of their hours of service? Are they going to be considerate of their sleeping schedule? And we compile all that data together, and when we compile that data together, we price that customer. And it's a constructive pricing. It's not just I want $5 or $6 per mile. We actually explain what the basis for that pricing is, whether it's going to be going to areas where fuel is going to be more expensive, whether there's going to be increased toll cost, or certainly the shippers and receivers we're going to be working with that day have extended wait time. And based on that, we tell them, hey, here's the price, here's what we can offer, and we know that we can deliver the quality you expect.
Yeah. I know you've made some expensive investments in equipment and driver quality. Why? Do you get a return off of that?
Absolutely. I think our drivers are our biggest asset, and their biggest asset because they're facing our customers daily. That's number one. Number two is they're the ones that are doing the majority of the execution. They're the ones that are away from their families and turning the wheels. So making sure that our drivers are well taken care of is extremely important, which also aligns with why we choose more expensive, newer trucks. So ultimately, our customers know that we're not going to have breakdowns, and the drivers feel comfortable so they can deliver the product.
And Robert, question for you. You see a macro level view here at DAT. What do you see carriers doing right that helps them stand out in the market?
Yeah, I think to kind of summarize a little bit what you guys were talking about is, we can talk about consistency and all of that, but what I really see is a lot of times the drivers and the owner operators and all the carriers that have a plan, and really that's what helps. So, stuff does go wrong. So even if you can be consistent 99% of the time, that 1% time that something does go wrong, if you come at it with a plan of how you're going to go fix the problem or address it, and don't just take a problem to a broker, you can say, hey, here's the problem, here's how I'm going to solve it for you. That's really, brokers tend to remember that one instance. So you can take that negative, flat tires happen, stuff like that, and take that negative and turn it into a positive. Whereas, if you're not doing that, it can spiral out of control pretty quickly, and that's when bad things can happen and you can hurt relationships.
Ivan, you mentioned that you're not the cheapest option. How do you explain your value to brokers without just sounding expensive?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the values as a company we have are echoing through our dispatchers, through our track and trace team, through our drivers. And when customers look at that and they compile everything together, they understand that everything has cost. If you want to have highly qualified individuals working, they're going to be more expensive. So high qualifying individuals are more expensive. However, they do deliver better quality of work and more consistency. So that's how we explain it to our customers. And oftentimes, if we're not the carrier of choice, the customer later on comes back to us and says, we made the choice, we chose somebody cheaper, here's why we want you to actually take care for this now. So if the customer wants a cheap carrier, let them have it, and if that carrier doesn't deliver what they're expecting, I'm sure they'll come back to us.
So you're also then picky about who you work with.
Absolutely, all the time.
Tyler, same for you?
I'm sitting here listening to him talk, and all I can think about is the story about the mechanic that come out to the ship and couldn't get anybody to start this engine. But they called this one guy, and he comes out there with a hammer, and he hits it in the right place. And he charges them $20,000, and they're like, well, you didn't do anything. And he explained to them, hey, you had these different individuals come out. You're paying for my knowledge. You're paying for the fact that I knew how to get your ship started. So, I mean, the answer to that question is you're paying for someone's knowledge. You're paying for, what they put into something and how well they are at troubleshooting and understanding what they're going to get into.
That's really interesting. I like that analogy a lot. So you obviously have a lot of experience in the industry. What extra value do you bring because of that experience that you can convey when you're working with like a broker or shipper?
So value, not taken away from Ivan. I mean, he's obviously figured out how to duplicate himself and keep consistency. But the value I bring that I see in myself is, you're going to get me. You're going to get exactly what I say I'm going to do. I don't have to rely on anyone else.
Yeah. Problem solving. I know you always run into, you talk about issues you've run into, and that experience comes in handy, right? Versus going with the cheapest option a lot of times.
It does.
So Tyler mentioned a unique challenge that you probably have, right? Like, how do you make sure that all of your drivers are representing the brand you're trying to convey and that trust and that value to your clients?
So for us, everything starts with, we don't always hire the most experienced driver, but we always hire the right character. So if the driver has the right attitude, he can come learn from us, learn with us, maybe teach us something as well along the way. But ultimately, he can be part of our organization. So everything starts with hiring the right people with the right attitude. Once that's done, they go through robust training, which aligns with our SOPs. And those SOPs are being followed to the dot. And we ultimately come with, we come up with a KPI that's measured weekly. And the information is being shared to the drivers. So if there's alignment, we ultimately achieve the customer satisfaction. If not, we see how we can improve ourselves and how we can get to that level. It's expected.
Yeah, I love that. Tyler, I'm curious, you're on the phone a lot with brokers. How can you tell if it's going to be someone that values your experience versus is just looking for the cheapest truck, right? Because you're picky. You said you're picky about who you work with. But how do you tell what that broker prioritizes?
I won't say it's 100% accurate, but we all know that people operate off of a script. Like, if I feel like you're on a script, I'm just done. Like, I will do things a little bit cheaper, just the gift of gab in a conversation. Just like I feel like someone should value me and my knowledge. When I get on the phone with a broker or a broker's associate that seems to know what's going on and it's just a smooth gift of gab, well-rounded individual, they may convince me to do some things that I may understand their value.
Interesting. So what do you think, well, let me ask you this, Ivan. You mentioned that you said the word, carrier of choice, right? What does it take to become a carrier of choice?
Spoke a lot about consistency, spoke a lot about the SOPs, spoke a lot about training, but it's also the reliability, like being able to get a phone call from your customer at 2 a.m, being able to know exactly where their cargo is, in our case, knowing what temperature the cargo is at, And if there's anything that needs to immediately we have to adapt into our operations, we do it immediately. So that's what makes us the carrier of choice, not being the strongest, the largest, the cheapest, but really being the most adaptable carrier. That's what makes us the carrier of choice.
And so, Robert, you mentioned kind of maybe, some carriers not understanding their value or their worth. What do you think causes maybe newer carriers or some carriers that have even been in the industry for a while to not understand the value they provide and use that to their advantage?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is a lot of times in this industry, we hear newer carriers especially say, hey, I need to make X dollars per week, right? And like that's a big number to them. Hey, I need to make $10,000 a week, $7,000 a week. That's how I know I'm profitable and how I'm a good carrier because I'm hitting that number. And that's kind of the wrong way to look at it, right? You kind of have to step back and go, okay, great. What are all of your different prices and your operating cost per mile? DAT in our DAT1 app, we have the ability for those new carriers to put that information in. So once you get that very basic understanding of what your operating cost per mile, you can start to manage that. And then you can take that information and compare it to things like the DAT market rates, the market conditions, and combine all of that data together to really understand where you fit into that. And that's really where, as you're going through it, you're gonna kind of find ways, but like on the DAT rates, we always have an average there, right? Every carrier is gonna be somewhere in that average usually, right? Some carriers that we talk to say, hey, I'm always at the bottom. Well, that's part of your value, like that's part of when you see that often, it's usually because, there's something there that you need to change to make your brand stick out even more. Versus some carriers are getting at the higher end, and that's partly because of their brand. And once you figure out how to tie those two together, that's where you become really, really powerful.
Love that. So what I'm hearing, pricing, it's not, there's an element of confidence in it when you're speaking to a customer, but it also comes from that ability to solve problems, reduce risk, and giving whether the broker or the customer just a reason to believe you're the safer choice, right? Because at the end of the day, that is what some good brokers, right? And this is what I noticed in the industry too, right? Like you are gonna have some brokers that are looking for the cheapest rate, but the good brokers, like they do value, right? And so they are willing to pay more for a carrier they know they can trust because they don't wanna lose that client either. So let's talk about then, so we've talked a lot about the value, again, like I referenced in the term of a logo, but what that represents, whether it's just how you appear, right, how you speak to customers, how you maintain your equipment, how well you treat your drivers. I want to talk about the second aspect of positioning and using data, right? How do you go from charging $1 to the $6 for the bottle of water in an airport, right? And so I'm curious, Robert, what's the most important number every carrier needs to know? You mentioned kind of the rates, but like, what do you think is the most important when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the operating cost per mile. Like it is shocking to me in talking with carriers that, they don't know that number. Right? Like that's the base cost of how your business operates. And so, a lot of carriers, when you're looking at, well, how can I get better? There's a lot of times just in the base level of your operating costs, you can shave some different pieces out and do different things. But once you understand that information, then you can really start to be a little more powerful. And that's like the one thing, if I could have every owner operator have that number off the top of their head, that would be like really impactful in the industry.
How challenging on that? Like, why do you think that some carriers just don't? Is it inexperience? Is it laziness? Like, why do you think some people don't?
I think the biggest thing is sometimes it's just a little bit time consuming when you first do it, right? So it does take a little bit of time. Like you have to sit down and you have to really think through what are all of my expenses, right? And that takes time, and that you have to go through everything and look through your bank account because sometimes You might have something that like your truck payment, your trailer payment, stuff like that, is coming out. But a lot of times there's those underlying smaller expenses like your ELD or things like that you didn't factor into all of that factors into your operating cost. And so that's really the most difficult thing, that it just takes some time, and you just have to sit down and go through it and be methodical about how you go through it. But once you do it, that number is really powerful. Now you really know how you can manage your business.
So I got one more question, follow-up question. Once a driver knows that cost per mile, should they use then market data to make better decisions?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing is whenever you're looking at the markets, there are going to be some markets that no matter if you're a good quality carrier or not, that market is just not a high-paying market, right? It is a consumer market. They bring lots of stuff in, but they do not produce anything in that market. So you have to sometimes make decisions. Do I, go 200 miles deadhead to go pick up another load in a better market? If once you know that operating cost, you can start to make those decisions like, oh yeah, maybe it's okay if I lose $100 on this load because I can go over here and make it up here. But if you don't know that and you're just chasing $7,000 as your weekly number or whatever it is, then you can really drive yourself hard and drive yourself crazy trying to make it, and at the end of the day, you're actually not profitable.
Yeah. Going back to the very beginning, this gentleman in the front, thank you again for participating. He mentioned that he's willing to pay more for that beer at a stadium because it's the only option. He doesn't have any other options. How can trucks what tools do they have to make sure that they're going to be the only option when they get into a certain area?
I mean, one of the biggest things on DAT that you have is you have the ability to post your truck, and you can post your truck with a rate. And that's huge because ultimately there's not every company actually posts their truck. And so when you are that company that has your truck posted, I know I give Tyler a hard time all the time when he posts his truck out there. But when you post your truck with a rate on DAT, what that allows the broker to see is if you're the only truck posted, but they know exactly what that rate is going to be somewhere in there, that starts a really honest conversation. You can start out having a negotiation right away. That's pretty powerful, and that, ultimately, otherwise, you're calling them. If they're calling you, you're in the position of power. They need you. Yeah. They've taken the time to call you. You're now the one that owns that conversation, that negotiation a little bit. And so, that's what I would say is every truck driver should be posted in their trucks.
Okay, Tyler, so then tell me more about posting your truck. Why is that important for you? Do you do it enough?
So to piggyback on what he was just talking about, yes, he gives me a hard time. I started posting my truck with a rate based on his recommendation. That relationship we discussed earlier, it started from a phone call from that broker. And my rate was just, realistically, it was ridiculously high for the times. And he asked me, he said, why are you so high? I said, that's just my rate. He's like, are people actually paying this? I said, yes, sir. He said, all right, well, I need you. I'll pay it. And I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. There was really no reason for me to be that high, but I didn't want to go where he was sending me anyway. So, I mean, there's no such thing as a no. Everything has a price on it. So I took the load, and I mean, this has been a year and a half ago, and I'm still rocking with him. So.
So then let me ask you, so I know you're going all around the country. How do you position your truck in an area that you know is going to give you leverage?
I don't. I should know the name for this, but I don't. There is help me out here, Robert, the market conditions.
Market conditions index.
I look to see whether I'm going into a no zone or a go zone. Like if I'm going out there and I see that I'm gonna fight trucks for freight, I'm gonna jack that ridiculous rate up there because I've got to counteract. But I mean, I try not to do that. But if I can jack that rate up there and somebody's gonna pay it, then I can do a market shift somewhere else and get back out of there. But generally, the best thing to do is go somewhere where you know you can get out.
Yeah, yeah. So Robert, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, you mentioned measurement. I'm curious, on an ongoing basis, what do you think drivers should track if they want to improve over time?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think you need to track your overall performance. Like, ultimately, we can talk about, your operating cost per mile. That gives you a good idea on each load. But realistically, like, one of the things that I tell drivers, like, if they're not tech savvy or don't do anything, the very first, you have a pen and paper, most everybody, write down every load that you run in a month. I know you have your bills and invoices and all that stuff, but if you're not organizing it, start with pen and paper and just write that stuff down. But that's really, as you go through that process of going through that, again, it's just basic understanding your business, but it is so impactful once you start to understand, oh, hey, this is the market I went out of, and I had really good opportunities, like, Indiana or wherever it is. And then you start to memorize those areas and know, like, oh yeah, now I have context into next time I go in that area, how that works. You can also save your loads on the DAT1 app as well. So you can also save them to your My Loads tab. So if you book a load, you can say, hey, I booked it. It will go into your My Loads tab, and then you can see them in there as well. So if you don't have DAT, start there. Or start with writing it down. If you have DAT, start putting them into the My Loads tab.
Nice, nice. So Ivan, that brings up a thought for you. Like, you're a pretty large fleet. You're probably not using a pen and paper to record all your data. How do you record data? How do you leverage that data then to make better decisions on positioning trucks?
We largely use DAT. DAT products are definitely empowering our everyday decisions. Additionally, we have a TMS, which we compile data in, and we compare the data between the two and understand what the markets are. If we're going to go into a dead market, we typically avoid their areas where it's absolutely no service for us, no matter what. If we get just a very important customer that we have a very good relationship with, we might make an exception, but at that time, we'll still price it in. We'll consider the 200-mile deadhead that we might have to an area that's a little more decent, so we can ultimately achieve an okay average. But looking at data, looking at historical freight, what we have pulled with different people out of that area, and being able to benchmark and understand what we're going to be facing in a couple of days.
Awesome. So we have some time for an audience Q&A. If you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to keep asking these guys questions, but I'd love to hear from the audience. Appreciate the comments earlier. If you have a question, or please, raise your hand, and we'd be happy to field it.
The mic is next to me here. Hi, my name is Dan with Danway's Express. Okay, how do you do with some of the brokers? And in this particular, I'll single out one broker. TQL, they are big, right? Everybody knows these guys are a problem. It's only that they have a lot of freight. That's a fact. Some of them are very good, but some of them are just obnoxious, to say the least. You deal with one is an angel. You deal with another one, the other one is a devil. It's that simple. So how do you deal with that, and the fact that their customer service will always side with the brokers? And especially now, the other question is with the integration with RMSI and what is this other one here? Highway. That these brokers are threatening carriers to report them on highway so carriers don't get the loads. And highway is also ridiculous because they will never contact the carriers to solve or see where the problem is. How do you deal with that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the question. Tyler, I'm gonna throw this one at you.
Right? I love this. Let me have this one.
Because you need to be a little picky, right, about who you work with, and it's not just one broker, right?
Right, but okay. So let me do this. Since you brought up a name, I'm gonna tell you exactly how I deal with that brokerage. I don't have to deal with the individual that has posted that load. I have relationships with other brokers, and I can call them, and they will discuss and pull and move that load for me, so I can run it. I understand exactly what you're saying about. That's what I consider the script, because you feel a lot of times when you talk to the larger brokerages that there is a script, there is it's just a culture. So you've got to find. You said you found some people that you like and that you work with well. Save their information. When you find one of their loads, contact them. That actual brokerage has their own app as well. You don't always have to talk to them. You can go and you can communicate to them through the app. The dashboard app they have, they will reach out to you if your negotiation meets and matches. You had a second question and I lost it.
Okay, sorry about that. It is the integration of most brokers with the RMIS and highway.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're not, in my opinion, we're not going to beat them. They're here. You got to be pleasant, and when you're not pleasant, you got to realize. Well, for me, I realize if someone's not pleasant with me, if it doesn't work out, it wasn't for me. There's another one out there that they're not designed for us. You can call them. They are as pleasant as can be. If you get a freight guard on you, they're as pleasant as can be. But they will put you on hold and give you a message that says your number has been blocked and you can't ever call them again. They're not rude, but they're not designed for us. So you have to work with who's willing to accept you and work with you. And even at these brokerages, if you find someone that you've worked with successfully, you can call on the load. If you're getting attitude or you're not getting the help you need, go to that person. I've got a name. I'm not going to drop it, but I've got a name at TQL now. If I want something there, I will call that individual, and they will facilitate for me. Does that answer your question?
Partly, yes. It is, let's say, a situation which you have no control. You booked a load, and especially some of these brokers who lie. They'll post a load in Dallas, but then when they set the rate confirmation, it is picking up 200 miles away. And now, because sometimes you miss actually that part, they'll never tell you it is 200 miles away or 100 miles away. But you sign, and then the driver is late. So now the conversation changes that you did not pick up the load on time because you are late. But in the first place, they lied to you that it was in Dallas while it was 200 miles away. Or sometimes they will post a load in Dallas but tell you it is picking up in Houston, which is just ridiculous,
I'll say that in all business, it's about relationships, right? And it's no different than, dating, right? Like, they're evaluating you, you're evaluating who you want to work with. And it's important that I think a lot of what we talked about is like knowing, not being treated like a commodity, right? That someone can just purchase, but understanding it goes both ways. That just as they're evaluating carriers, you as a carrier have to evaluate who you're willing to work with. And I think that actually solves a lot of those issues that come up a lot of the time. And I'll ask, Ivan, I'll throw it to you too. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, oftentimes I have these conversations with my coworkers, different dispatchers that are focusing on just the rate per mile. But the rate per mile is a number that, until you're paid, is really just an imaginary number that you have on a piece of paper. There are companies out there that are solely focused on charging carriers different fees, whether it's going to be for tracking, for late deliveries, for not making your check calls. not sending a photo of something, you name it. And oftentimes you've done all of that. They're just bad players in the industry. And you have to create yourself a list. You have to know who you're working with on the other side. And if maybe the company has the right values and you want to work with them, just like Tyler said, find a good rep. If there's an issue, escalate it through him before it gets out of control. And if you don't know anybody there, go on LinkedIn, go on their website. See if you can find somebody you can possibly email, give some visibility to what's going on. Be professional, be there to help, be there to resolve your own issue that they have put you in ultimately. And oftentimes I see that loads are being posted with lots of deadhead, your pricing without deadhead, and ultimately that's your bottom dollar. And if that's who's on the other side just telling you, misleading you, create yourself a list of people you don't want to work with. It doesn't have to be the entire company. It could be that specific individual. But report that individual to their managers. Make sure that they're aware of what's going on. Maybe their manager is not aware of that.
Yeah. Thank you. We got a question up here. Well, we got a mic coming.
Okay, I can put on my trooper voice.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm not a TQL supporter or apologist. I don't give a crap about TQL. But when I was a new carrier in 2020, they were the only people that would work with me. And the first thing I found out, I researched their culture. And when they post loads, they geotag multiple areas around where their pickup site is. And as a carrier, you're responsible for finding out where you're picking your load up. If you get a rate con and it says Decatur, Illinois, and you thought you were picking up in Chicago, well, you need to ask a question before you sign a rate con and send it back. You can't, that is their company policy. That's how they post their loads. And TQL is useful for new carriers because they'll work with new carriers, but those are kind of the first things you need to learn is how do they work? No, it's not always cheap freight. I have 3 TQL, 6 years later, I still have 3 TQL cell phone numbers in my pocket, because if I happen to be someplace in Idaho, which I don't do, but I can call Justin or whoever and say, hey, I saw a load, I think I can get it, can you just check on it for me? There are plenty of ways to work with these large carriers. King of Freight, Landstar's a nightmare, but everybody has their culture and their business model, their standard operating procedures. If you're going to work with large brokers, you have to learn them. They're not working for you. They have thousands of different carriers with 1 to 10 trucks all day long coming in and telling them how they're supposed to do their job. And then they get mad. And I get it. I mean, you said you're pleasant with them. They're pleasant with you. They help you out with a little more money. You tell them why. Just say, I don't move my truck for $4 a mile. Well, it's a business. So you have to know your numbers. You have to understand their numbers. And then you can come to a business-to-business relationship without being hostile and saying, TQO sucks and boycott, blah, blah, blah. They're bad people on all sides, drivers and brokers, but there are plenty of good operators that are just trying to make their customers happy. The brokers are our customers. They have their own customers. And that's it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, thank you so much.
It's about building a connection with maybe a specific broker at the brokerage. I recently ran 4 loads actually for the same broker with 2 different brokers, like employees from the company. And each time, they didn't know who I was. So I was calling the broker and saying, hey, I see that you have a load posted for so-and-so from here to here. I'd like to take that. And then I did it, and at the end of the load, I saw that there was, you naturally get another load. So I just called the same, hey, I'm finished with that load now, and I see that you have another posting. Trying to build that relationship with that one person. I think their name was Julio or something. Julio never remembered who I was, ever. So if you're trying to build these relationships with these brokers, specific ones at the company, and they don't remember who you are, what is your suggestion to combat that? Because we had fluid conversations, and we joked together, and we had a down-to-earth vibe with each other. He just never remembered who I was, which kind of hurt because I liked that company, I liked that brokerage, and I want to keep doing work with them. But if the broker isn't remembering who I am and I'm running 3 loads with one and 1 load with another back to back to back to back, how do you combat that?
Yeah.
If it is a community, building a relationship type of a thing, how do you combat that? That's my question.
Thank you for that. I'll kick that one to you since you're an owner-operator.
I'll say this, nothing personal, but you ran 3 or 4 loads. How many loads?
Sorry, I've run multiple loads with them. It's actually a brokerage that runs pretty frequently in the areas that I want to go. So I just wanted to see what the reaction would be if I did back to back to back to back loads. If I could build a better relationship and get a better rate. The company that I'm leased on to, because I'm an owner-operator, they have been working with this brokerage company for a really long time, like 50 years or something, like forever and a day. I'm just a new me, and I wanted to try to build a relationship with a specific broker. And I talked to different ones throughout, but I thought me and Julio hit it off. But I guess we didn't, which is fine.
You're getting the rates you want from this individual?
Yes.
Yes.
So I always try to talk up the rate as well, just for whatever. You got to know your worth.
I'm a one truck carrier. I work with some people that don't ever remember me, and as long as I'm getting my money, as long as the conversation's pleasant, I want people to know me. I want people to like me and jive with me. But when it comes down to it, my personal opinion, I think you and this individual need to run more loads. I heard 3 or 4. When you think about it, a brokerage, one broker might run 400 or 500 or push 400 or 500 loads in a year. So a brokerage, my God, how many loads do we think a brokerage can move multiple loads? So I don't think it's personal. I think it's just.
No, I don't think it's personal either. But I understand. I hear what you're saying. I just get a little confused because I worked with him for almost 2 months solid. You know what I mean? He would call me, hey, can you get a check-in? Like, yes, here's my check-in. So it wasn't like 3 or 4 loads randomly. It was back to back to back for about 2 months that I worked specifically with this one individual. So that's why I just get, I don't understand how to combat that. But I hear what you're saying. I'm not.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to maybe establish another channel of communication with the individual. If the person seems decent on the other side, and you're trying to reach him by phone, he's not answering, one of his coworkers is answering, and they don't care about his load, because that happens all the time. Simply send an email, add him to maybe one of the professional social media platforms, contact him there, be like, hey, I've delivered your shipment, just wanted to provide you an update. Next time you're en route to the same area, send him an email, reach out to him by phone. Try to really approach through different channels of communication. Oftentimes, you'll reach out to somebody, they'll pick up the, mark the load is delivered, and that'll be the end of it. So try to establish a different channel of communication is important.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I like that.
I'll add, and I appreciate the question, and I know we're out of time. I'll add that, from my perspective, one of the most underutilized tools from carriers is social media. You'd be surprised how many brokers are on a platform like LinkedIn and how few carriers are. And I would encourage every carrier to create a LinkedIn profile. I would encourage every carrier to post pictures of their truck on LinkedIn when they deliver a successful load. You'd be surprised how far that goes. Because brokers, they spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, a lot of them do.
Do you think that LinkedIn is the more stronger of the social medias than
Absolutely.
TikTok or something like that?
For brokers, I do think LinkedIn is key. I think carriers should play in all, but I think for reaching and establishing relationships with specific brokers, I think LinkedIn is very key.
It is more professional.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, we'll be here. Feel free to come up and ask, and appreciate you joining.